Hi, Virgo. There is a particular kind of silence that arrives just before, not the silence of emptiness, not the silence of absence or waiting or giving up. The other kind, the held breath kind, the kind that exists in the half second before a match catches, before the first note of a song you've been hearing in your head for weeks finally plays out loud. The silence that is not empty, but full, so full it has stopped making sound. This silence, you have been living inside it. And tonight, or perhaps it has already begun, right now, in this exact moment as you listen, it's possible that the held breath is finally releasing, that the thing you have been rotating in your mind, like an object you can't quite put down, the thought that resurfaces at odd hours, the quiet obsession dressed as a passing hope, is moving, shifting, taking on a shape it didn't have before. Let's talk about what it means to think about something for a long time, not the casual kind of thinking, not the fleeting curiosity that passes through and dissolves, the sustained kind, the kind that returns, the kind that has worn a groove in you, the way water wears a groove in stone, not violently, not all at once, but through repetition, through the quiet insistence of coming back. Again is less than #0. 5# is greater than, and again, and again. That kind of thinking is not random. The mind is not careless with its obsessions. When something lodges itself in you and refuses to leave, when you set it aside and it returns, when you reason yourself away from it and it waits patiently at the edge, that is not weakness. That is not delusion. That is your interior self pointing at something it considers unfinished. And unfinished things have energy. They pulse, they demand, they keep the lights on in rooms you thought you had closed. But here, right here, is where I want to slow the current slightly, because surprises, amazing surprises, the kind that feel destined, the kind that arrive at night like something finally exhaling, surprises are psychologically complex territory. We say we want them, and we do. We genuinely do. But what we often mean when we say we want a surprise is that we want the right surprise, the one we secretly designed, while telling ourselves we weren't designing anything, the one that confirms the story. We have been quietly, carefully constructing in the margins of our days. And real surprises, the ones that matter, the ones that change things, don't always arrive in the shape we prepared for. They arrive in their own shape, irregular. Sometimes smaller than expected is less than #0. 5# is greater than and somehow more significant. Sometimes larger and slightly frightening. Sometimes dressed as something ordinary that only reveals its weight later. Days later, looking back, when you realize that was the moment, that was the match catching. So let me ask you gently but directly, What exactly have you been thinking about? Because I notice you're here, listening to this, which means something in you is already in conversation with whatever this is about. And it's possible, the way these things often work, that the thought you've been carrying is not one single thing. It's possible it is layered. A person on the surface, a situation beneath that, and beneath the situation, something older, quieter, that has very little to do with the present moment and everything to do with who you are becoming. Because the thoughts we return to most persistently are almost never just about what they appear to be about. They are about longing, about a version of your life that exists just past the edge of where you currently stand, about a self that is waiting, not passively, but actively waiting, the way a door waits to be walked through on the other side of a choice you haven't fully made yet. And tonight, this specific night, this particular threshold, it's possible that something is being offered to you, not handed, not delivered like a package with your name on it, offered the way light is offered to a room. When someone finally opens the curtain, it doesn't force its way in. It simply becomes available. And what you do with that availability is entirely, completely, irreducibly yours. Now, I want to go somewhere darker for a moment. Stay with me. There is a shadow that follows the word finally. Finally, such a loaded word. Such a word that carries within it the full weight of everything that came before it. All the times it didn't happen, all the moments you thought this is it, and it wasn't. All the hoping you did quietly in the interior where no one could see it and no one could disappoint it, finally carries grief inside it, even when it arrives as celebration, even when the surprise is genuinely good, because finally implies a before, a long before, a before that cost something, a before full of almost and not yet and maybe, and the particular exhaustion of wanting something you couldn't make happen by wanting it harder. And I genuinely think that part of you deserves to be acknowledged. Not just the part that is about to receive something, but the part that waited, the part that kept the thought alive through all the seasons when it would have been easier to let it go. The part that held the thread when the thread was the only thing there was. That part of you is not naive. It is not desperate. It is, and I mean this with full sincerity, one of the most quietly courageous things about you. Attends, because there's something I need to name here. Before we go further, the anticipation you're feeling right now, that electric, slightly vertiginous sensation of standing at the edge of something. It has a twin, and the twin is fear. Not the fear of things going wrong. That fear is familiar. We know its face. We've sat with it before. I'm talking about the other fear The stranger one, the fear of things going right, the fear that arrives when what you've been thinking about stops being a thought and starts being a reality. When the imagined version, which you have had complete control over, which has never disappointed you because it only exists inside you, has to make room for the actual version, which is messier, which is real, which can surprise you in directions you didn't script. It's possible that somewhere underneath the excitement, very quietly, very honestly, there is a part of you that is bracing, that has learned to brace as a reflex, that knows the particular ache of hope that arrived too loudly is less than #0. 5# is greater than and left too quietly. I see that part of you, and I'm not going to tell it to relax. I'm going to tell it, you are allowed to be here. You are allowed to be cautious and open at the same time. Those two things are not opposites. They are, in fact, the most honest way to receive anything good. Let's talk about the word tonight, because it matters. Tonight is specific. Tonight is not someday or eventually or in time. Tonight is the narrow, precise, slightly urgent window of now. And there is something about now, about a surprise that arrives in the dark hours, in the quieter half of the day, when our defenses are softer and our hearts are less guarded, that makes it land differently than a surprise that comes in daylight. Night has always been the time of real things. The conversations that matter happen at night. The realizations, the confessions, the moments when the performance of the day finally drops and two people or a person and themselves meet without the costume. It's possible that whatever is moving toward you right now has chosen this hour deliberately, not because the timing is poetic, but because this is the hour when you are most yourself, when the noise has settled, when the space inside you is open enough to actually receive something. And receiving is less than #0. 5# is greater than real receiving, not just acknowledging, not just nodding, is a skill. One that many of us were never directly taught. We were taught to give, to perform, to produce, to earn, but to simply open, to let something arrive without immediately calculating what it costs, what it means, what it demands of you in return. That is the harder practice. And it's possible that tonight is asking you to practice it. Not blindly, not without discernment, but with the particular kind of openness that says, I have been thinking about this for long enough. I have examined it from enough angles. I am willing now to let it be something other than a thought. Here is something worth carrying as this night unfolds. And I mean this as a genuine question, not a comfort. What would you do with this surprise if you weren't afraid that wanting it made you too much? or not enough, because it's possible, very possible, that the only thing standing between you and the full, unguarded experience of what is coming is that ancient, exhausting negotiation you have with your own worthiness. The one that asks, do I deserve this? The one that suggests, maybe this is for someone else. The one that whispers, don't get too close to it in case it disappears. That negotiation is not protecting you. It never was. It was only ever keeping you at a safe and lonely distance from the things that were always already yours. The match is in your hand. The silence before it catches is ending. And what comes next? The light, the warmth, the small and significant fire of a thought becoming real. Doesn't need you to be ready in the way you imagine readiness. It doesn't need you polished or certain or unafraid. It only needs you present, here, in this night, in this body, with this particular irreplaceable, quietly extraordinary mind of yours that has been holding a thought long enough to watch it become something more. Let it land, whatever shape it comes in, whatever hour it chooses, whatever version of itself it brings to your door tonight. Let it land, and let yourself be the person who was always capable of receiving it. Because you were, even through all the waiting, even through all the almost, even in the silence before the match catches, you were always that person